if the original Build Back Better passed, because I believe that. There was a great article written on that the other day. The original Build Back Better had paid family leave, childcare, universal pre-K, free community college, expanding Medicare, higher minimum wage, lowering all prescription drug prices, not just some of them, expanded child tax credit. I could have said, look, that's why the Democrats lost. But thankfully, later on in this, I end up getting that point in anyway, but I decided to go with the more broad breakdown of she codes as a technocratic status quo manager and he codes as a change agent, right? I also could have made the argument about narrative, which is that Democrats don't have a narrative and Republicans do. I think the Republican narrative is false, egregiously so, but having some answer is better for people psychologically than having no answer. And Trump's answer is, the reason your life sucks is because of immigrants and trans people and cultural elites. That's why your life sucks. And the Democratic response to that is, actually, your life doesn't suck. Look at the GDP number, look at the stock market, line on graph go up, right? That's their reaction. And that's not going to work. You need an agenda. I'm sorry, not an agenda, a narrative. Well, you need an agenda too, but narrative is the more important thing from a promotional perspective. And the narrative, of course, needs to be, it's the billionaires, it's the big money donors. They have bought this government. They've rigged it in favor of them. They've rigged it against you. So I could have gone a number of different ways, but I decided to go with the, basically the most basic argument about Democrats are technocratic status quo managers and Trump codes as a change agent, even though to the extent he is a change agent, he's what I would call a revolutionary conservative, which means he has the feel of that he's going to deliver a revolution, but functionally, he's the fourth term of George W. Bush. He's George W. Bush on steroids. And the change is going to be more pro-big business, more pro-billionaire, more pro-corruption, more pro-war, etc.
But I would add to that what Bill Maher's been warning for a long time to liberals, speaking as a liberal himself. And I'm pretty much where he is politically, I think. I feel the same way.
That's a hilarious thing to say to me because I spent like every other day, I rip Bill Maher a new asshole. I'm like that guy that you absolutely despise and mock on a regular basis. Okay then, Piers.
But she's very much associated with a lot of those woke issues. She's certainly voted in line with a lot of the more progressive stuff, like allowing transgender athletes in women's sport and so on. So she's seen to be a progressive who then moved rapidly to the centre when she got the nomination, and it was all too much of a screech for people, probably on both sides. But this whole woke ideology, I don't mean the original woke ideology of raising awareness for racial and social injustice. I mean the way it's become a kind of new form of fascism, where the far left just basically want to cancel, shame and humiliate absolutely anybody who disagrees with them about anything. Do you accept that has become a problem, a stick to beat the party with, which actually really damages them electorally?
No, I think Kamala ran basically the platonic ideal of a non-woke Democratic campaign. She never mentioned race. She never mentioned gender. She never mentioned trans people. She never mentioned pronouns or Latinx or cancel culture. She repeatedly stressed that she was going to represent all Americans. She ran to the right on the issue of the border. She talked about owning a gun. She ran on freedom and patriotism. And so when you put all that stuff together, I simply don't know what people are talking about when they say she's
well, they're talking about her.
So to back myself up, I really want you guys to stop and think about this because there is no good rebuttal to what I'm saying. There's just not. You need to understand something. I have been viewed by many as the moniker of the anti-woke leftist, right? Because I spent years on this channel telling people, just don't shut down the comedians, don't censor them. If Ben Shapiro comes to give a speech at your college, you don't need to protest and say, we don't want him to speak at our college. Like, let these idiots make their idiotic points, and then we can respond to it, and our responses are stronger than their arguments, so we win, right? So I've been that guy. I mean, I've argued for the right of fucking Ann Coulter and like Milo Yiannopoulos to give their speeches on these college campuses, right? That's me. That's me. I'm a big free speech bro, as everybody knows. But take it from a guy who has those priors, who believes in free speech, right? Who's not an authoritarian, censorious weirdo. This was not an issue in this race. It just wasn't. Kamala made a point of never bringing up race or gender or anything that could conceivably be viewed as social justice warrior-ish. And by the way, if I had to guess, if I had to speculate, I think it's because Obama talked to her and said, look, when I won, I didn't bring up that stuff either. And to this extent I did ever bring up race, it was like one of those, hey, black kids, pull up your pants type speeches. So I think she was given the advice, you will not win if you go quote unquote woke. And so she didn't. And then after the fact, everybody it's like everybody shuts their mind off and just goes based off vibes, and they think, hey, something happened in 2017 on some college campus, therefore Kamala's responsible for everything woke in the world, and that's why she lost. And it's like, you guys are just simply not analyzing what actually happened. And that is incredibly frustrating, because the takeaway is going to be, hey, you guys just need to throw trans people under the bus more, or throw immigrants under the bus more. That's how Democrats can win. This is what Seth Moulton was out there saying after Kamala lost. And that is the wrong lesson. That is the wrong lesson. We don't need to throw our immigrant brothers and sisters under the bus. We don't need to throw our trans brothers and sisters under the bus. That is a distraction. That is a distraction. That is feeding the right-wing narrative of the way the country works. The right-wing narrative is immigrants are to blame for all your problems. Trans people are to blame for all your problems. Point the finger at them. You don't want to reinforce their narrative and their worldview. The real reaction is, why the fuck are we talking about immigrants and trans people when they are not the cause of anybody's problems? They're just not. You want to know who the cause of your problems is? It's the big money donors. It's the corporations. It's Wall Street. It's the military industrial complex. It's the people who bought the government. We're talking about trans people when we should be talking about that pharmaceutical drug, which costs $240 or so in the UK, and it costs $38,000 here. Why are we not talking about that? Why are we not talking about the millionaires and billionaires who lobbied the government and got their taxes cut and got subsidies as you got screwed? Why are we not talking about Trump's tax plan, which raises taxes on working people and lowers it for the wealthy? Why are we not talking about a country where millions of people don't have health insurance? Millions of people. Medical bills are the number one cause of bankruptcy. And we're talking about trans people. They didn't hurt anybody, right? Like, you think it's easy to be a trans person? To feel like you're basically in the wrong body and have society look at you skeptically? You think somebody would willingly choose to put themselves in that situation? That's like saying back in 1978, people are choosing to become gay. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Stop pointing the finger at people who did nothing wrong. But that's their move. That's what Republicans do. This is the divide and conquer, right? Here we go.
Well, hang on. They're talking about her record as vice president of the Biden administration, where they never stopped talking about this stuff for nearly 4 years.
So on this one, I really wish in retrospect, I said, name one policy you're talking about that they did that was in this vein. Name one. Name one. Because Joe Biden is the least woke man on planet Earth. I think everybody knows that. He's 7 seconds away from saying some sort of old school racial slur at any minute. Because he doesn't know you can't say, like, whatever, Oriental or whatever anymore, right? He doesn't know it's Inuit and not Eskimo, right? Like, at any given second, Joe Biden can drop a racial slur. He's the oldest white man on the planet. So what are we talking about? And Kamala Harris, again, what are you talking about? You want to know what they did the last 4 years? You want to know what the bulk of their energy was on? You know it already. It's the CHIPS Act, bringing 800,000 manufacturing jobs back here. It's the PACT Act, giving veterans health care when they were exposed to toxic burn pits. It was the Inflation Reduction Act with a 15% corporate minimum tax rate. Like, these are the things that they were focusing on. The idea that every other day there was some, trans bill coming up where the government is going to mandate that you allow a trans person to sleep in your spare bedroom. Like, what are you talking about, Piers? I don't know what planet he lives on. This is all right-wing, vibes-based politics. This is the narrative that comes out of misinformation, which is relentless from the right, where people just start thinking their view of the world is correct, and Democrats are lost in the wilderness on social issues. The reality is, it's the Republicans that won't shut up about social issues, because that's their scapegoat. They want to point the finger at their scapegoat. If we're going to talk about social issues, Piers, why would we not bring up, in 2022, we had a vote on gay marriage. 36 Republicans in the Senate voted against the right to gay marriage, and 169 Republicans in the House voted against it. If you want to have the conversation about social issues, let's talk about the extremism and authoritarianism on the right, which permeates the party. In the year of our Lord 2022, they voted against gay marriage. If you want to have a conversation about social issues, that's what we should focus on.
You can pretend when you get the nomination, whoa, I'm a centrist, and I'm a gun-toting Rambo, by the way, as well, to all you Second Amendment people. But actually, if you judge her on what she said and did in 4 years, she was a progressive left.
I should have pointed out also, that's a performative contradiction. In other words, he's saying, man, why is she so woke? She should be less woke. And then she points out, well, when she was running around with a gun and cracking down on the border and saying the things that he wants her to say on these issues, he was like, that's inauthentic. So then she can't win. Just admit that there's nothing she could say or do that could get your support. Because on the one hand, you're saying, hey, get away from these social issues. Then you're explaining how she did get away from these social issues, and you're still criticizing her.